Welcome to the Leader More podcast. Our motive is to pass on what we've found helpful over the years through leading teams, running operations, and dealing with life's challenges. We hope you enjoy. So, Scotty, competition. If I take you back,
Take me there.
45 years ago, when you were a baby, Scott.
Oh, get real.
Oh,
Like
sorry.
21 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Settle
I
down.
thought you were going to say 48. So, baby Scott,
Yeah.
9 pounds, 5 ounces, whatever it was. So you start to grow up.
Yeah.
Because you're growing up, you're learning new skills, you're improving yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're doing that alongside other people within society, you're inevitably going to compete with others.
Yes.
Fair statement?
Yeah. As a child, less likely than as an adult, since you kind of have, well, depending on where you're from in the world, you kind of have like, food delivered to you on a platter and things like that. But yeah.
Brothers and
generally.
sisters fighting for food?
We never fought for food. we
8
did
of yous.
Yeah, well, there was 8 of us, but I don't think the system was like, we're going to deliver a trough to the table. And unless it was fish and chips, it was like that. I think you compete for, in the society I grew up in, you compete for different things. Achievement, for example, like at school, if you wanted, ducks or whatever it is these days, you had to be within the top percentage of achievers and things like that.
So like there's competition between siblings, there's competition against neighbors, there's competition in sports.
Yep.
So like I want to talk about competition, and this is going to be hard for us to keep on track.
Yeah.
I want to talk about competition and not so much internal drive.
Right.
So if we looked at internal drive as like the engine, why you're doing things,
Yeah.
probably needs another whole episode, that one, right? But as we'll probably go through over the next hour, we'll get a bit of an idea is that they're very linked. And
Yeah.
I suppose one's the starting point, and then because there's that starting point, that then opens itself up to, okay, I'm competing against others because like that analogy of you as a young child 45 years ago, it's inevitable, right?
Yeah.
It's not to say that that's why people progress, but essentially competition is the arena when you've got people doing something similar at the same time within society, you're inevitably going to be competing.
You as an organism, you want yourself to grow up and get nutrition and survive. We all have a
So evolutionary sort of...
there is a drive that you'd want to compete. And then for other reasons as well, for like reproductive reasons and things like that.
Yeah. Social too.
Yeah.
The social influences, if you think about that. Like if you're in that situation at school.
Yeah. I want to be the top dog in the playground, which I necessarily wasn't. I used to hang out in the Indonesian room at recess and lunch.
Oh, God.
Playing Yu-Gi-Oh.
Playing what?
Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like a card game.
Oh, okay.
So Giga Chat. But yeah.
So there's those drivers there, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, well, going down that path of that internal drive, and there's different ways that you can probably encourage that. And, you look at carrot and the stick stuff, you look at purpose, you look at autonomy and different ways to produce that. And they're probably going to be very linked to what we're talking about. But yeah, more so around in a team environment because competition is always going to happen. So is that a bad thing?
No, I don't think so. What you're talking about within like a workplace dynamic, for example, like the internal drive for me is just like people's motivators, right? And we talked about like, motivators and motivations and things like that. Everyone's motivations are different. We all want to try and achieve what we set out to do in our motivations, and that leads to competition between one another. Unfortunately, there's not enough attention to go around for everyone. Some people want to climb the ladder. Some people just want to support their families. Some of us just want lots of money. And I think that's
Yeah.
a good motivator for a lot of people. Is
Well,
that
there's links there in there, like that episode 1 where we said about leadership motivations. And if
Yeah.
it is when you've got primary primary motivations around power, status, money, that can get you probably from a competitive point of view is like, that could get you into the same sort of issue, like, oh, I just want to beat everyone. I want to be better than someone else. Well, why do you want to do that? And is that going to be healthy in a team environment? Like if you looked at it from a bad perspective, okay, yeah, the link already has come up between internal drive and, the arena of competition. But if you're a leader and you've got a group and you've got a couple of team members within that group that their internal drive is based on some motives that I just want to beat everyone because I need that to be me.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be some toxicity that pops up in that competitive environment.
Like there's nothing wrong with competition in general. Even in that, like, I think that we demonize human behavior a lot. And I think that a reason a lot of people refrain from being so competitive and not like chasing what they want is because like there is this idea that, oh, well, you're just like doing this to be better than other people and you're doing this for these reasons. I think no matter what reasons you have, your motivators are just as important as other people's motivators. And therefore competition is inevitable. Now there is a scenario where you're just afraid of competition because it affects how you feel so much. And we used to have a word for this in a video game I used to play, and the video game was League of Legends, and there was a competitive scene with it. And if you stopped competing, there was a reason, and it was called ranked anxiety. You stopped competing because you had anxiety about how you would feel if you lost.
Okay.
So you would, say you were this good at the game, but then you would compete like competitively and then you lose. And all of a sudden there's this realization that, oh my gosh, I'm actually not as good as I said I was. So a lot of people would get to a certain point in the game and then they would stop competing on that competitive level.
Fear of failure.
Fear of failure, absolutely. Okay. And I think that happens a lot in like even the workplace, which is you notice all your peers and people around you, and you realize just how hard it is to have to triumph over every one of them so that your motivators are achieved and theirs are not. Is there a world where everyone can just achieve their motivations and everyone gets to live happily? I wish there was. But at the moment, like there's only a certain finite amount of pineapples and everyone wants the pineapples.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. If I've got an internal drive of, I want to continually be better at League of Legends, right?
Yeah.
Your analogy, not mine here.
Yeah. Your hands are probably too like you probably don't have the dexterity.
But I want to be the GOAT at League.
Yeah,
of
you want to be
Legends.
faker.
Yeah, I want to progress.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a cool motive. I want to improve myself. Then I'm in a competitive environment, which is inevitable in that sort of situation. You can understand why people would say that competition is bad, because if it's getting to a point where someone's saying, oh, well, they're just quitting and they're not realizing what they're wanting to do, well, what's the point of competition?
Yeah.
And I suppose one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this and get a bit passionate about it is that competition gets a really bad rap because of situations like that. Competition is not the bad thing.
Yeah.
Like there's an opportunity there for resilience, support, relationship building, to be able to get to a point where that person can overcome that fear and get through it. Yes, that is confronting. Yes, that may not feel nice. And yes, that isn't ideal, but like there's plenty of growth that can come out of that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I myself used to tackle the feelings of ranked anxiety by just challenging the thoughts that would come up when they did. So like even just this thought that, hey, if I play and I lose, it means I'm a bad person, or I'm worse than I think I am, or I'm not as good as I think I am. Yeah. Like you can challenge that thought and just go, oh, it's just a feeling. Like there's nothing really validating it except that I'm thinking it right now. Mm. So it is something that you can definitely challenge. If you don't challenge those, it leads to like toxic behavior, because instead of challenging those thoughts and like growing from them and improving, you instead reserve yourself to this idea that you're at like some plateau where you can't improve. And the only way you can improve is by sabotaging others. And I think this is where the toxicity comes from in competition, which is you get to a certain level and you feel like you can't improve anymore. And then the obstacles to you succeeding are other people. So then, I mean, I've like sat around with people who were in law school, and this is like, it's like very common where they try to sabotage each other because.
Well, it comes back to that. We spoke about this in perception v outcomes, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm at this point. What can I do to get higher? Where, do I rely on marketing myself and my image, or do I rely on my outputs and what I can produce? And if my outputs aren't happening, oh shit, I've got to do something here. What do I do? You know, it's hard. I'm not capable. I doubt myself. I can't improve my outcomes. So I'm just going to have to do this. It's my only option, you know? Like,
Yeah.
you can get into a bit of a slippery slope there.
Yeah, absolutely. But in general, you can see that like this whole sense of competition, it's still driving like some value, right?
Fair to say that competition is a driving factor and can be leveraged to produce outcomes within a team environment.
Yeah, I think that's quite evident.
Like everything else, though, it has downsides. It's not that competition is bad. It's that there's humans involved within competition. And as humans, we do bad things, or we do things in our own self-interest, which aren't necessarily the best for others. So competition, if we looked at it, Scotty, as a driver and something that can push people out of their comfort zone to improve.
Yep.
Right? And within a group, that's pretty undeniable that that happens. It's not to say that it's perfect. It's not to say that some people are going to compete in not a fair way and different things like that. But it does push people out of their comfort zone. I look at it from a sporting point of view. Let's say you've got 13 people on your side, right? You need 13 players. If you only have 13 vying for 13 positions, okay, so everyone gets a spot, the level of competition for positions is low. It's non-existent, all right? There might be some interchanges between the different positions, but overall, everyone gets a spot. Compared to when you have 26 people and you have essentially 2 people vying for the one spot, that competition for positions within a sporting team is very noticeable, is that individuals will go that extra mile to improve themselves, to put in the extra effort, and the performance of the actual team increases.
Do you think that's why steroids exist?
Well, competition breeds poor behaviors. Like you look at the Olympics, right?
Well, that's, yeah.
You look at the Olympics, is that, okay, well, yeah, you got people who are clean and then you got people who are cheat.
Yeah.
Like that happens, it opens itself up. Doesn't mean that competition is bad. It means that human beings will necessarily push the limits outside of what's fair and reasonable within the rules.
That thing that we talked about before, which is like you feel like you've plateaued, and instead of challenging that idea that you're at a plateau, you go, well, how can I change things?
Well, yeah, where's that line between this is me, I can't go any further, I've tried everything,
or
what do I do
I need
now?
to go outside the boundaries to improve.
Yeah. So that competition for positions is really noticeable when you're coaching a side. Like you hardly have to coach as much for personal improvement because they do it themselves. There's this drive that I want to be better than Scotty. Scotty and I are going for the same position, and I want to make sure that I put in the effort. Now, I've been in environments where it's like you and I won't speak to each other. It's like if I'm the young guy, obviously, and you're the old guy existing, you won't speak to me because I'm after your spot.
Yeah.
I'm the enemy. Like, why the hell would I give you the time of day? You know, and I've been in environments where that's pretty toxic. But then also I've been in a lot more environments where that competition for position, as an example between you and I, is that you will actually help me be better because you understand that if you help me, that means that's going to push you to be better because you can see that I'm improving.
Yeah.
So there's this support mechanism. And again, you know, arcing back to that, rank anxiety that you were talking about. Well, is it competition that's bad, or is it just the fact that you got to a point where you had an option where it could be a negative outcome, it doesn't necessarily mean that the competition is bad. It just means that there's an opportunity there.
And it's a good thought, like keep yourself on your toes. Like if you're improving everyone around you, you're kind of leveraging that thought of competition to go, well, I know if I improve, Derek, then there's going to be this internal drive from me, which, wherever it comes from, it goes, oh, well, I need to stay competitive, so I'm going to keep improving myself. So,
well, I find it personally when I'm doing, fitness drills within sport, and you've got guys that are younger than you that are competing against you. Now, we're not giving out medals at the end of a fitness drill.
What's the point?
well, let's say it's 10 by 100 meter sprints every 40 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So every 40 seconds you do a 100 meter sprint.
That's
right?
like toddler stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you and your little gaming mates, righto. So you got 10 by 100s, right? You get to a point where it's like there's no medals, there's no accolades for anyone who wins, but I find myself wanting to beat the other guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's not necessarily because I just want to be better than them, but I feel this drive within me and I can utilize and leverage it to make my performance better based on me wanting to beat them.
Yeah, right.
Which is weird, but and I look at it from
It's not weird. I think it's like completely normal.
Well, this gets back to that internal drive of competition. And again, why I get annoyed with people who say that competition is bad. Like, it's human nature. Like, this is ingrained in us. This is the thing that drives us. And, whether it be for good in regards to, improving performance, or whether it be for bad, like you look at wars in the world, like they're competitions, probably the ultimate competition with everything on the line there is like you either save your country or you don't save your country, or you live or you die. Like there's no higher stakes, but essentially that's a competition.
Yeah.
From a logistical point of view, from a production point of view, and just a physical point of view, like there's so much going on there.
Definitely. Look, would I have brought war into this? No.
Sorry, mate.
Instead, I contributed League of Legends.
Yeah. Who's the darker one here? What was I saying? So it can be subtle too, Scotty. Like, if you looked at it from a point of view, is that I'm competing just to beat others, just to beat those young guys, compared to the outcome of me improving and competing is me beating the other guys that I'm running against in those hundreds, right? And that's really subtle. It's not necessarily my driver, it's the outcome.
Yeah.
But in the end, we're getting back to internal motivations and drive there. But, I leverage that all the time to do that.
Yeah, I think the competing against young people one is actually like quite prevalent, because I do it in like sports a lot, because it's almost like a denial of the fact that you're dying. Like you're like, hey, if I can perform at the level of this 20-year-old,
young bull type thing.
Yeah, if I'm 21, for example, and I can perform at the level of this 20-year-old, then I'm not so bad. I've still got some longevity in me.
Yeah. So what would you classify that as? Is that like a psychological factor?
100%. No, I just think that's like the whole, you're like bolstering your ego to go, you know what, I'm not an old chunk of coal. Like, I am still, kicking it with the young ones. Which in my case, absolutely.
So from a workplace point of view, you've got a team, you've got people within that team, obviously, that are going to be competing against each other. Like, you can't turn that off. Leveraging that. So are we competing for team results? Are we competing for individual results?
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line?
Yeah, I think, it depends on who you are. I obviously...
Or the environment.
Yeah, and the environment. It's interesting how, some leaders leverage competition in the workplace, because it sometimes get to this point, and I've seen this happen, where you kind of make people compete against each other, and the goal is that, someone might get a promotion and the other people won't. But then there comes this point where during the competition phase, the leader doesn't have the courage to go, oh, sorry, only one person gets the position. So instead, all these weird positions are created and all these titles are given out. and they're all like super meaningless, right?
Mhm.
But they're like, little rewards at the end.
It's funny though, like, do you even need like those rewards? Like if this is ingrained in us, do we really need that little trophy at the end of it all? Or is the personal growth and improvement the trophy?
I think if you're talking about most people, going home at the end of the day and just without any recognition and saying to yourself, you know what? I am so happy that I got that growth opportunity. That's not enough for people.
Yeah.
And
It should be recognized.
Yeah, I think recognition is important. And I think a lot of people might tell themselves, you know what? No, I don't need recognition. I can go home and just be happy with the growth. But like, I can say this from experience as well. Like, until you take away that recognition, you don't really understand how important that is a driving factor for people, that they are recognized for their efforts. And
So shining a light on achievements from a leadership point of view will encourage and foster that competition,
I think so, absolutely.
both internally and against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also important that, like, and this turns back to relationships, is that like people respect you, because sometimes you'll get recognition from people where you couldn't care less what they have to say.
Yeah, it doesn't hold as much weight. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I was recognized by someone who barely saw my work, but they were in a position of power, I would kind of, and this happened to me before, where I've been recognized by like a higher power, and I walked away from it going,
What, the Lord?
Pretty much Jesus himself. And I walked away from it going, mate, I know you're like all seeing and whatever, but you actually don't know. And you've written down here what I've been up to, but you actually don't know any of that. Like, you've heard this through someone else, and you're leveraging.
So you've put holes in the feedback type thing.
Yeah. Whereas like if someone who was like
holes.
very actively involved in a process, who was like overwatching what I was doing, wrote that same feedback, I would go, oh, you know what? This person understands what I've put into this.
Yeah.
That sort of like recognition is important to me.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be trophies, and it doesn't have to be the driving factor, but recognition can obviously encourage that and foster that competitive environment. What about sort of like the bad things? Like, if you're from a leadership point of view, some of your team displaying behaviours that are a little bit toxic, bad sport, more about perception than outcomes, and starting to drag others down. Really important that assertive conversation and some clear boundaries are set there. Like, again, people will give competition a bad rap, but it's like any game or any situation in life, there's always got to be some boundaries and some
Here's where I
rules
think it
involved.
gets interesting, because we have discussed over the past, few weeks or months now, it's been almost half a year. We've talked a lot about outcome, right?
Yeah.
And this is where it gets interesting, which is that toxicity is happening, but what if it's producing good outcomes? Like, where does that leave you?
Well, where do you draw the line? Is your environment that you're after a short-term outcome, and it's got to be fast-paced, and I can really use competition? There's going to be some detrimental effects in the long term, but that's fine. The project's over. Like, it doesn't matter. We'll never see these people again. What does it matter? Or is it a situation where it goes against the values within that organization, and that competition is taking away from what we're about? Like, that's an issue.
Yeah. And I think, organizations can't really have values. People have values. So that all depends on who is like at the helm of the ship as well, right? So some person might see toxicity in the workplace and goes, hey, this is still producing outcomes. Like, this behavior is good for what we're trying to achieve. And they might be completely happy with that. Another person might look at that and go, oh, wow, what's going on here? This is
unacceptable.
not great. Like, we need to fix this.
So it's more on the, I suppose, the opinions of the people that are.
Yeah, but I just think it's interesting in general, because it's, like I said, we are like very, we disagree about a lot, but one thing that we do agree about a lot is like the outcome of, and we're very outcome focused. And while, the journey is awesome and all, but we are kind of like looking at how we're producing results and things like that. And it's still interesting to me to toy with this idea of, well, there are actually negative behaviors which you can harness, which like produce good outcomes. And well, actually, like, do I have to now mix like some sense of morality in with like how I'm achieving results? And like, what is,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah. The other one that comes to mind there, and it is prevalent these days just in general, is empathy and having that as a driving value.
Yep.
You know, you could probably argue that competition and, you know, the effects of some competition can be in direct conflict with empathy, because there's, all right, well, people aren't always going to be happy. People are going to be in situations where it's not necessarily going to be comfortable for them. That doesn't mean that it's not healthy for them. Doesn't mean it's not exactly what they need. Doesn't mean that that's not going to produce outcomes. But hey, I can understand why people are feeling that way. I'm empathetic towards that. That's not okay. Competition isn't good here. This isn't great, you know? And if like that can be a conflicting value.
Yeah. And like, yeah. And like for me, that's like very, like that resonates with me, because I look at some competition and I like empathize with people a little bit too much and go, oh, well, that makes me feel bad. And so if I want to look at that person and not feel bad, I have to alleviate that situation that they're in. And if that's competition, I go, well, we can't like keep competing, because every time I look at the person who's losing, I empathize and I feel bad. So I don't want to empathize with that person and feel bad. I want to feel good.
The conundrum that comes up here, right, is that we build relationships with the teams that we have.
Yeah.
So you get to know them on a personal level. You have empathy towards them because you understand them, and you have an awareness there, right? Throughout a competitive environment, which is inevitable, it happens, it's going to happen. You can sense and feel that people aren't necessarily happy. Like I said, doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing for their growth. However, that competitive environment is producing all these outcomes. So what, we're going to deny all these outcomes and say that we can somehow just turn off competition because we're more worried about how someone feels?
Yeah.
That would build like, that's the conundrum. Like, how do
Yeah.
you balance that?
Yeah.
Is it competition's bad? No, people's feelings are more important, but that has a direct impact then on the outcomes that are produced.
Yeah.
For the team. So,
like I said before, I think that it purely depends on the person who's helming the ship, because some people will react and go, I don't like, the outcome is more important to me than how I empathize with the person. But then some people will be the complete opposite. So,
well, the environment, right? If you've got a ruthless situation in a sporting team where there's a high performance elite competition, well, you've got to, you've got to produce outcomes.
Yeah,
you've got
absolutely.
to do it, right? So that's a non-negotiable compared to a business that may be more so around, oh, look, we're about, empathy, and we're all about, being good humans, and we're all about this sort of stuff. It's like, well, you can sort of understand if that's the values. You can understand why that is not going to be pushing competition.
And like we've talked about the competing against each other and how it can produce good outcomes. There is like this other side of things, I feel, that you can get improvement out of an organization through competition. That doesn't necessarily have to be pitting us against one another, right? And that's this idea that I know a lot of organizations utilize, which is competing against your own past performance. So as a team, you're not individualizing or calling people out going, hey, well, Sally did this many and Gregory did this many, but you go, guys, last year we did produce this many units or did this much volume. Let's see if we can beat that this year. And I know for me, that's like a huge motivator of going, oh, well, we did this previously. Let's see if we can
improve
better
on that. Yeah. Or, and having a goal or a target of an industry standard.
Yep.
It's like, the industry standard is this, we're at this. Let's improve, to get to this point over this amount of weeks, right? Like, I think, because that personal one is just like, okay, pitting people against each other. Well, that was going to inevitably happen, whether it is because, like we said, competition's just inevitable, or whether it's because my analogy around competition for positions and things like that. So those team ones are pretty cool because they can set it at a team point of view. Where you get into some funny stuff, right, is that you inevitably have to look at people against each other and individual performance.
Yeah.
Because let's say you've got a team and we're wanting to improve, and then you've got, 3 of your 10 on your team that are just working their butts off.
Yeah.
They're producing, they're doing great, they're improving. While the other 7, are just out the back. You're
And I
just
think that,
spectators.
I think that comes back to performance management, where maybe you can do that one-on-one with people, like more
confidentially.
privately.
Yeah. That's a conversation between you as a leader and them as a team member.
Yeah.
Not necessarily something that should be displayed for everyone to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Although everyone sees it.
Yeah, well,
within the team.
It depends on
it
depends on what sort of environment you work in, but yeah, certainly.
when someone's an anchor or when someone's actually a beneficial part of the team. Like teams competing against each other can get a little bit tricky too. Like within an environment, in any environment, if you got a couple of different departments or a couple of different grades of teams or whatever it is, night shift v day shift is a good one.
That's a big one.
There's some toxicity that can come out of that sort of environment. We do the same thing, but these guys are not as good as us.
Yeah.
So
Night
guys,
shift never clean up at the end of the night.
Yeah, there's a few things that go on there. But that can be tricky too, because that's going to inevitably happen. Like if you're tracking performance of teams and people can see that, and like what you mentioned is that even if you're not displaying it or tracking it, you can see from outputs and behaviors of, these people are leaving the place in a mess. These people haven't done as much as what we thought they would get through or what we would have got through. So that's just inevitably happens. Again, like what do you do there? Is that a situation where you control that and add some boundaries into that and work on their performance? Or do you just go, competition in general is bad and we've got to try and turn it off? Like it's not an option.
Well, the funny thing is, isn't it like interesting that when no one is competing, like when someone, like it just takes sometimes like one person who just doesn't care, like who just genuinely doesn't care. And then everyone else just goes, well, if they don't care, I don't care. Yeah. And then it just divulges into, well, what everyone else is working towards isn't worth it. So let's all just stop competing.
Well, yeah. And it's like, we've got 3, hard workers out of 10, and then you've got the other 7 that aren't. It's like, you get to a point where you're one of those 3 going, I'm an idiot. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
Why am I pushing my performance? Yeah, I get it's a reflection of me. Yeah, I get it's what I'm about and I enjoy it. But like in the end, I'm getting used here. Like these other 7.
Yeah, or maybe subconsciously they're even just more like, hey, I'm a part of the 3, and then there's a sample of 7 over there who seem to think that what I'm working towards and what me and the other 3 are working towards is a waste of time. And maybe they kind of like get this idea that, well, if there's 7 of them who think it's a waste of time and only 3 of us, maybe it is just a waste of time. So I'm just going to stop doing this.
Yeah, it's hard. And if you don't deal with those individual poor performers, well, the team suffers, right? And it becomes an issue. The competition goes from competing to do some positive things to competing about who's the worst.
Is a way to improve, like we've talked about improving performance, right? Is a way to improving performance then to make the 7 feel like it's worthwhile? I don't think we've, like
Yeah, well, that comes down to a few factors, right? And I look at this when I recruit people, is that if you've got someone who is been involved in team sports and even better is a captain or has been a captain within those team sports, I see that as a really big plus from a identifying talent point of view. Because if you've got a competitive team environment and you bring people that have been exposed to that sort of stuff, whether it be at a junior aspect or into their adult years, like that's not perfect, but that can show you that they've thrived in those type of environments. And the reason why I bring that up is because, well, it depends on the person. If you've got 7 people that just don't care, I'm here for the money. Well, I don't care about your little competition thing that you think's going to happen. Is ingrained in us.
Yeah.
Like this is, your voodoo doesn't work on me. It's not happening. So it depends on the person. Depends then on the environment, what they allow.
Absolutely.
But if you're in a situation where you the black and white facts are is that you need to be able to do this by this time, is that you're going to get stuff done. So, well, if you've got free reign and you don't have to be efficient and you can pay whatever you want, you just get a endless amount of people to do that. Well, okay, fantastic. But is that the real world?
Yeah.
Within an organization where, okay, well, that's just not a factor. Like businesses are there to make money. Teams are there within sports to win.
Yeah.
Like you can't turn that off.
Yeah.
The other thing too with teams is like how often you have like little spurts of competition. Your point of, okay, well, we want to improve on past performance. Well, if we're improving on past performance for the last 3 years, it's just like, oh, mate, I'm getting a little bit sick of this.
Yeah.
The goal is just not going to happen. It's unattainable. There's, instead of having sort of little sprints instead of long marathons of competition, I think those ones are interesting. It's like, okay, by the end of, week 6, we want to be at this point, and we can give some progress updates along the way each week of where we're at. It's a condensed version, and then you mightn't do it. You keep it stable, and then you look at, okay, we're going for another little sprint of competition. You can really drive it in that way instead of this big, long, drawn-out thing that happens forever.
So contrary to popular belief, everyone is going on about toxic competitiveness and in organizations and all this and all that. Do you think it's a good thing?
Well, I just don't think that the competition is the problem.
Yeah.
Like that's what we said at the start. It's inevitable, and it's just part of what we're about as human beings. It's us as human beings and how we compete. Are we a good sport or are we a bad sport?
Yeah.
And we're all susceptible to that.
So we kind of got to shift our mindset from, hey, I'm competing for the sake of being better than others, to this mindset of, hey, well, I need to compete because that's a good leveraging tool for myself to improve.
Yeah, like it's an ingrained trait that we have as human beings, and it pushes us and drives us out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
How can we leverage that to improve performance? How can we manage that so it isn't a toxic thing? What are the boundaries that get put in place? How can you produce outcomes and utilize competition as a driving force instead of something that is not used and is underutilized or creates a toxic environment? Like, what can you do to do that? And I think they're the sorts of things. It's not necessarily us going through and this is what you got to do, but it's more so it's just around like competition isn't bad. Like it's just part of who we are as humans. And yes, as humans, we can be bad, but that doesn't mean that competition is
you don't have to demonize the behavior.
No.
It has its place. It has
a tool,
an evolutionary advantage.
Yeah.
It's like for me, it's still though interesting that it's not very spoken about. Like no one acknowledges with each other that they're competing with each other in the workplace. Or like in general, really. It's something that people stray away from and they're afraid to talk about because I think it does have such negative connotations, and it's like it is demonized a little bit, like being over competitive is something that's talked about a lot, whereas you don't hear it like the phrase under competitive. Like
lazy, I think they call it.
Yeah. I mean, that could be it. But
well, I think it's just, the why and the how. So the why being the internal drive, and then the how being competition, and how you go about competing is important. And, and it's just like, okay, well, just because competition is there doesn't mean that, doesn't mean that it's all bad. That's for sure.
For sure. Anyway, good chat.
You enjoyed that, did you, Scott?
Yeah, well, we almost fell asleep. Look, I was up all night, like reading.
Nightclubbing again, were you?
Yeah, look, me at Northbridge on a Friday night.
What's that second night of the week out and about, I'd imagine, for you?
Yeah. Look, I am a party animal. Anyway,
No, thank you, Scott.
No worries. Until next time. Thanks for having me. Catch up.
It's always a pleasure, mate.